She was just a coworker until she dropped off Soup at our apartment, called him her person, and texted at midnight, "You looked so good today." He said I was insecure, jealous of nothing. So I left. This morning, I woke up to 46 missed calls, and a text that said, "Please just let me explain." The container was white, the kind with the pop-on lid you get at delis. Steam had long stopped rising from it. There was a folded paper towel underneath, like someone had been worried about making a mess on our counter. Next to it was a note, written in loopy handwriting I didn't recognize. "Feel better, my person." I didn't touch it, just stared. Marcus came out of the bedroom brushing his teeth, barefoot and scrolling his phone like nothing was out of place. "Soup delivery?" I asked. He glanced over, gave a short laugh through the toothbrush. "Lee dropped it off. I was out cold, said she was in the area." I didn't say anything right away. He walked past me, rinsed, spat, wiped his mouth. "She's a soup freak, thinks it cures everything." I picked up the note, held it in 2 fingers like it might sting. "She called you her person." He rolled his eyes. "God, you're not seriously getting weird about that." "I'm not getting weird. I'm asking." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "She's dramatic, you know that. She says stuff like that to everyone." That wasn't true. I'd met Lee 3 times. She didn't say things like that to me. She barely made eye contact. I remembered her handshake, limp, delayed, like her hand arrived a few seconds after the rest of her. I turned the note over. Blank. "Why didn't you tell me she was coming over?" "Because I didn't know," he said. "She texted when she was downstairs. I didn't even answer until she said she was leaving it at the door." I looked at him. He looked calm, too calm, like a man reciting something he'd already rehearsed. "You don't see how this is a little offy." "No," he said, and now the edge came in. Just enough to let me know he was done humoring me. "I think what's off is you getting jealous over Soup." There it was, that word. And the way he said it too, not playful, not teasing. Weaponized in a way I'd started to recognize more often. I didn't respond. I just folded the note, slid it into the trash, and walked to the bathroom. The Soup stayed on the counter. He never touched it. I never asked again. But that was the moment. That's when I knew I wasn't crazy. I was being managed. It would be easy to say it was just Soup, that I overreacted, that I made something out of nothing. And that's what I tried to tell myself as I brushed my teeth and changed into sweats and tried to forget the handwriting. But my body knew better. The cold in my stomach didn't come from guessing. It came from recognizing a line that had already been crossed before I got there. It was the note, yes. But it was also the fact that Lee had felt comfortable enough to bring something into our home, into my space. She wasn't just circling anymore. She was stepping in. And Marcus? He didn't flinch. He didn't rush to explain or soften the edges. He acted like I was the one with poor instincts, like this level of intimacy was normal, harmless. Just Soup. But the problem was, Lee wasn't a stranger. She was a name that had been circling our life for months. The coworker who texted late, who always needed help with something after hours, who sent Marcus memes at midnight and tagged him in jokes I didn't get. She was always around, just enough to be familiar but never enough to be accountable. And the worst part, I hadn't even fully admitted to myself how much it bothered me until that note. My person. It wasn't a slip of the pen. It was possession wrapped in lowercase letters. It was deliberate. I replayed the scene as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling while Marcus snored lightly next to me. I thought about all the times he defended her. How every comment I made about her tone or timing was brushed off as jealousy. But it wasn't jealousy. It was pattern recognition. And now, the pattern was sitting on our kitchen counter in a plastic container. By morning, he acted like nothing happened. Kissed my cheek, said he was running late, grabbed his bag, and left. I waited until the door closed. Then I got up, walked to the kitchen, and stared at the soup again. Still untouched. I opened the lid. It was chicken noodle, homemade. The kind with wide egg noodles and carrots cut on a diagonal, like someone had done it by hand. It even smelled good. I dumped it in the sink, not because I was angry, but because I was done pretending this didn't mean something. That was the beginning of the end. Not a fight, not a betrayal caught red-handed, just a slow unraveling that started with a note signed with a single letter. It wasn't about the soup. It never really was. It was about everything that came before it. The small things, the kind you tell yourself not to make a big deal about because they don't come with sirens or screaming or lipstick on a collar. They come as a nudge, a glance, a text at 11:47 p.m. with a laughing emoji that doesn't belong. The first one I noticed was back in April. Marcus and I were out with friends, Loki bar, trivia night. I was mid-sentence when he glanced down at his phone and smiled. Not a huge grin, just a subtle thing, one corner of his mouth tugging upward. He typed a quick reply and slid the phone back into his pocket. I asked, "What's funny?" He shook his head. "Just Lee, work joke." That was the first time I heard her name in that casual, drop-it-here tone. No context, no invitation for follow-up. I let it go. Then came the memes. Not between him and me, between him and her. I'd see the notifications flash sometimes when his phone lit up across the room. Not once, not twice, consistently, and always late. I asked once, "Does she always message you after midnight?" He laughed. "She's a night owl. Her brain doesn't turn on until 10. He said it like it was charming, like I was supposed to find it quirky. So I adjusted. Told myself not to be the jealous girlfriend. Laughed along when he called Lee harmless, or said she reminded him of a golden retriever, too eager, too friendly, too dumb to know better. But she knew better. I knew she knew better. There was the day she sent him a video from some random team meeting. Her and Marcus sitting next to each other, whisper laughing like teenagers while their boss talked numbers. Lee's voice said, "Don't you dare show this to anyone else, it's ours." He showed it to me. I didn't laugh. He said, "You're being weird." I said, "I'm allowed to feel something when a woman you work with calls a moment with you hours." He kissed my head and said, "It's just how she talks. She's not a threat." And that's how it worked. Each moment small enough to seem harmless. Each reaction of mine just big enough for him to reframe it as insecurity. I started questioning myself, wondering if I'd become too sensitive, too watchful, too suspicious for someone with no actual proof. It wasn't like I had screenshots of sexts or receipts for hotel rooms. It was Lee saying things like, "Don't steal him all weekend, we need him Monday." Or sending homemade cookies to the office and packing extra just for Marcus. Or tagging him in Instagram stories with the caption, "Work husband vibes," and it was Marcus brushing off every single one of them. "She's just like that. You're reading into it. Don't start." It wasn't one thing, it was all the things. And they were always just subtle enough to make me feel like the problem. That was the real trick. He didn't defend her so much as dismiss me. He didn't say I was wrong. He said I was difficult. "You know what you're doing?" he asked once after I brought up the cookies. "You're punishing me for being likable." That stuck with me, not because I believed it, but because he said it with such confidence, like being liked by someone else meant I owed him understanding. Meant I had to be the one to absorb the discomfort. He made it sound like a compliment, like I should be flattered he was desirable. I carried that line for weeks. "You're punishing me for being likable." That was the moment I started writing things down, not in a dramatic journal way, just quiet notes on my phone, time-stamped. Factual. 6:18, text from Lee at 11:13 p.m. "Sleep well, troublemaker." 7:2, Lee told me at the barbecue that Marcus rescued her from a boring meeting. He laughed. Didn't deny it. 7:15, Lee left a post-it on his monitor. "I vote you lead every meeting, or at least sit next to me forever." I wasn't collecting evidence for anyone else. I was collecting it for the version of me that might later try to rewrite history. Because that's what happens when you're with someone who's slowly eroding your reality. You start to forget what actually happened. You start to doubt the edges, so I wrote it all down. And I read it back sometimes, quietly, just to remind myself, no, I didn't imagine this. This isn't a fluke. This is a pattern. The text came at 12:08 a.m. We were in bed. Marcus had fallen asleep maybe 20 minutes before. I was reading on my phone, trying to wind down when the screen lit up next to me. I didn't mean to look. I wasn't snooping. His phone was face up on the nightstand. But the name was hard to miss. Lee, and the message, "You looked so good today, just saying." No emoji, no context, just those words sitting like a challenge in the dark. I stared at the screen until it went black again. For a second, I actually considered letting it go, telling myself it was another weird Leeism. Another moment that could be explained away in the morning, but something snapped. Not loud, not messy, just sharp. I nudged Marcus gently. He stirred. Hey, I said, keeping my voice low. You got a message. Huh? From Lee. He rolled over, grabbed the phone, squinted at it, then he sighed. Seriously. I waited. He tossed the phone back on the nightstand. It's not a big deal. She said you looked good today. So why is she texting you that after midnight? He rubbed his face like I was dragging him into something inconvenient. Not hurtful, just annoying. She's just being nice. You're blowing it up. I'm asking you to acknowledge that it's inappropriate. He sat up, leaning on one elbow. What do you want me to say? I want you to stop acting like this is normal. Because it is, he snapped. You're the one making it weird. You've been obsessed with Lei for months. Obsessed? Yeah, he said, sitting all the way up now. Every time she's mentioned, you tense up. You act like I'm cheating because someone at work likes to talk. She's not just talking, I said. She's crossing boundaries. He shook his head. No, you're drawing imaginary lines and daring me to cross them. That line stung. I'm asking you to see what's right in front of you. You're asking me to stop having a personality at work. I blinked. He kept going. You hate that people like me. You hate that I'm not just yours every second of the day. You want to control how I interact with everyone. That's not true. It is, he said. You twist everything into an offense. You act like I'm gaslighting you when I'm literally just living my life. You are gaslighting me, I said quietly. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. Of course I am, because nothing I say will ever be good enough for you. You've already decided I'm the bad guy. I sat back against the headboard, heart pounding. He looked at me like I'd disappointed him, like I'd ruined something delicate. Then he said it. You're too sensitive. 3 words, clean, final. He rolled over, pulled the blanket up, and closed his eyes like that was the end of the conversation. I stayed sitting for a long time. Too sensitive, not angry, not irrational, not wrong. Just sensitive in a way that made me the problem, me the flaw in the system. I could have woken him up again. Demanded clarity. Demanded he block her, set a boundary, choose me more actively. But I didn't. Because deep down, I already knew. This wasn't about her. It never was. It was about what he needed me to believe, that if I felt hurt, it was because I was fragile. That if I had doubts, it was because I lacked confidence. And if I walked away, it would be because I couldn't handle how much he was wanted. Not because he made me feel unseen. Not because he chose someone else's attention over my trust. But because I was too sensitive. And the thing is, for a few minutes that night, I actually believed him. It was Talia's birthday. One of those group dinners where everyone shows up late and the table's too long to talk across. We ended up at a trendy spot with overpriced cocktails and bad lighting. Marcus offered to drive. I spent the ride rehearsing in my head how I'd act if Lee showed up. She did. Of course she did. She came in with 2 other coworkers, laughing before she even made it to the table, cheeks flushed like the night had already gone perfectly. She saw Marcus first, waved, then made a beeline to the empty seat next to him like it belonged to her. She didn't even look at me. Marcus smiled, stood, pulled her chair out. The kind of move he hadn't made for me in months. I ended up across from them, wedged between 2 friends deep in a side conversation about work drama I wasn't part of. From where I sat, I had a clear view of Lee's hand on his forearm, casual at first, then lingering. I watched her lean in every time he spoke. Watched him let her. I didn't say a word, I just watched. Their jokes were familiar. Their rhythm was too easy. She laughed too loud even when it wasn't funny. He looked pleased, comfortable. At home, no one else said anything, because no one ever does. It's the kind of thing you feel in your body, the shift, the quiet betrayal. Everyone sees it, no one names it. Halfway through dinner, someone handed Lee a drink she didn't order. She raised her glass to Marcus and said, "See? You always know what I want." Everyone laughed, even Talia. I excused myself to the restroom, not because I was falling apart, because I needed to remind myself I wasn't insane. In the mirror, I looked the same. Same hair, same lipstick, same dress Marcus once said made me look like too much. I straightened my posture, took 2 slow breaths, told myself to get through it. Back at the table, dessert came with candles. Lee sang louder than everyone. Marcus had his arm on the back of her chair. When we left, he asked, "You okay?" I said, "Fine." He smiled like he believed me. But the truth was, something cracked that night. Not because he touched her, not because she touched back, because no one blinked. And I realized, sitting across from them in that dim, too loud room, that I was the only one still pretending this was normal. It happened on a Thursday. I wasn't looking for anything. That's the part that still feels strange, how often the truth doesn't arrive when you're digging, but when you're just passing through. Marcus had left his phone on the kitchen counter, unlocked, open. He was in the shower, singing to a playlist I made months ago, back when things felt lighter. I was grabbing my charger when the screen lit up. Lee's name. The preview said, "You're quiet today." And underneath that in the thread, more messages. Is she around? Wish you could just be honest with her. I hate pretending you're just a coworker. I didn't mean to scroll, but my thumb moved before I had time to talk myself out of it. Before I could whisper one of those tired lines we use to defend people who are already gone. There's probably an explanation. You're overreacting. Just let it go. No, this time I didn't let it go. The messages were all there. Not graphic, not overtly romantic, but worse in their own way. Intimate, familiar, like I was watching two people who had slowly, over time, built something they knew how to hide. Things like, "Still thinking about that look you gave me during the meeting." Fire. "I almost reached for your hand today. I had to stop myself. You make everything better, you know that." And one from Marcus, 2 days before the group dinner. "Don't push, I'll handle it." I didn't need context. I didn't need to ask what he meant by handle it. I was the variable, the one in the way. I stood there, holding the phone, listening to the water run down the hall, and felt something settle in my chest. Not heat, not panic, stillness, like the noise finally stopped. There it was, the thing I'd been trying not to name. The thing he'd spent months deflecting, minimizing, laughing off. He didn't cheat. Not in the way people picture when they say the word. But he'd built an entire second emotional life, one that needed me to stay quiet so it could exist uninterrupted. He'd made me the lie by refusing to tell the truth. And Lee. She knew every message she sent was a dare. She wanted to be caught. Or more accurately, she wanted him to be. But Marcus didn't want fallout. He wanted to coast. That was always his talent, finding the softest spot to land. I placed the phone exactly where I found it. Went to the bedroom. Folded laundry like nothing happened. He came in 10 minutes later, towel around his waist, humming. He kissed my cheek. I didn't flinch. Because I knew something he didn't. I was done waiting for him to tell the truth. I had found it myself. I didn't leave in a storm. No suitcase dragging down the stairs. No slammed doors. No last-minute confrontations with mascara-streaked cheeks and raised voices. Just quiet movement, like someone closing down a shop at the end of the day. I waited until Sunday morning. Marcus liked to sleep in on Sundays. He'd stay out late Saturday, sometimes with coworkers, sometimes with Brent from the gym, and roll in around 1 a.m., full of cologne and exhaustion and a story that always came with just enough detail to sound true. I didn't ask where he'd been that night. I didn't check his phone again. I didn't need to. The truth wasn't a puzzle anymore. It was air. It filled every room I stood in. So when he finally fell asleep, I got up. Moved slow, steady, like I'd already practiced. I took what was mine, nothing more. A few outfits, my books, the charger he always borrowed but never returned. I left the coat he bought me last winter, the one that looked good but never quite felt like mine. I didn't leave a letter, no long paragraphs explaining the obvious. I didn't owe him that. Instead, I pulled a sticky note from the pad by the fridge and wrote 3 words. You knew. I stuck it on the mirror above the dresser. The one where he checked his hair every morning. The one that always caught me in the background, blurry, standing behind him, unnoticed. I left my key on the table. I didn't double back. There was no part of me that wanted to stay. No voice in my head begging me to wait for an explanation, a confession, a better lie. I walked out at 6:42 a.m., bag in hand, coat zipped halfway, sky still dark. No music, no calls, no tears. Just the click of the lock behind me. I stayed at Nadine's that night. I texted her 10 minutes before I got there. She opened the door wearing a robe and holding 2 mugs of coffee like she'd known. Good, she said, stepping aside so I could walk in. You're done. I didn't say anything, just nodded once. That was all I had in me. She handed me the coffee, sat next to me on the couch. We watched TV in silence for hours, the way old friends can, no explanations, no forced conversation. She didn't ask why I left. She already knew. Because some things don't need to be screamed to be real. They just need to be enough. And this time, they were. I didn't block him right away. Not because I wanted to hear from him, I didn't. But because I needed the silence to mean something. If I blocked him too early, it would feel like control. Like reaction, I didn't want to act in defense, I wanted to act from clarity. The morning after I left, my phone was quiet. No calls, no texts, no check-in. Marcus didn't notice I was gone until noon, maybe later. He didn't message until after 4. Hey, you out with Nadine? Then you left your coat. And finally, you okay? I didn't answer any of them. I watched the messages come in like someone standing at a closed window watching rain. Dry, unmoved. Distant in a way I hadn't let myself be in months. He didn't panic right away. Marcus never panicked unless someone was watching. His first instinct was always performance, not repair. He wasn't worried I was gone. He was worried about how it looked that I wasn't home. By the end of that first night, I had 4 texts and a missed call. I muted his contact. Not blocked, just silence. I stayed on Nadine's couch for 3 days. She offered her bed, her car, her opinion. Mostly, I let her speak. He's gonna spiral, she said, scrolling through something on her phone while we drank boxed wine on the balcony. Not because he misses you, but because you're no longer available to reflect him back to himself. That sounded dramatic at the time, but it made sense later, because for Marcus, presence was proof. If you stayed, it meant he couldn't be wrong. If you cried, it meant he still mattered. If you fought, it meant he still had a chance to win. But I didn't cry, I didn't fight, I just left. And that silence. That was the first thing he didn't know how to respond to. By day 5, he messaged again. Can we talk? I don't know what's happening. Please just pick up. He still didn't say what he'd done. Didn't reference Lee. Didn't say, I know why you left. Just vague reachings, tentative hooks. I let them fall flat. Nadine watched me read the texts and didn't say anything. That's how I knew I'd done the right thing. She didn't have to coach me anymore. I wasn't on the edge of going back. I wasn't hovering near some emotional cliff. I was already across. I didn't talk to mutual friends. I didn't check his socials. I didn't scroll through our old texts. I didn't look for a sign of guilt, because I didn't need him to feel guilty. I needed him to be irrelevant, and silence was the only way to do that. On day 7, Lee messaged me. It was on Instagram. A DM request from someone I never followed back. Her profile photo was new, the two of them at a party, blurry, smiling, shoulders too close. Her message said, I just wanted to say I'm sorry if things got confusing. I never meant to hurt anyone. I stared at it for a long time, not because it moved me, but because it was so perfectly on brand. Vague, soft, carefully sanitized, like an apology copy-pasted from a therapist's worksheet titled How to Say Sorry Without Admitting Anything. She called it confusing. Not dishonest, not selfish, just confusing. I left the message on unread. Nadine was in the kitchen when I told her. She turned around, one eyebrow raised. Let me guess, she said. She wants to be forgiven without ever having to tell the truth. Exactly. You gonna answer? No. Good. She poured 2 glasses of water and handed me one. Hydrate, you're healing. I laughed, the first real one in days. The silence wasn't just a strategy. It was a recalibration. When someone's been twisting your reality for long enough, you don't just grieve the relationship, you grieve the version of yourself that trusted it. And I'd trusted him. Even when I shouldn't have, even when I knew better. That's what made the silence feel powerful. Not because it was punishment, but because it was peace. For the first time in months, I didn't have to defend my instincts. I didn't have to shrink. I didn't have to play detective while being told I was hysterical. I just got to exist, without explanation. And he didn't get access to it. That was the real shift, not the breakup, not the messages, not the code I left behind. But the fact that I finally stopped offering people a front row seat to my pain. I woke up to my phone vibrating on the nightstand like it was possessed. It buzzed, stopped, buzzed again, over and over. I blinked into the screen, still half asleep. And there they were. 46 missed calls, all from Marcus. No voicemail. Just a barrage of missed connections stacked like dominoes, hour after hour, from just past midnight until almost 6 in the morning. I stared at the number. At the way he kept calling long after it was clear I wasn't going to answer. Like repetition would make the silence crack. Then the texts started coming in. Please just let me explain. I didn't know how far it had gone. She wasn't supposed to mean anything. You have to let me say this. This isn't what you think. You looked right through me. Please, I can't breathe. Pick up. Please just pick up. None of them made me want to respond. Because nothing he said or begged changed the fact that every message was still about him. His guilt. His confusion. His need for closure. Not once did he say my name. Not once did he ask how I was. It was all noise, directed at a version of me that used to bend when he needed somewhere to land. But I didn't bend anymore. I just sat there, fully awake now, watching his desperation pile up in my notifications like digital evidence of everything I already knew. He didn't miss me. He missed the mirror I held up for him. The one that let him believe he was a good man who just got a little lost, a little overwhelmed, a little too liked. He missed the softness in me that made his excuses feel justified. He missed the version of me that would have replied at 2 a.m., still willing to believe maybe it was all a mistake. But that version of me was gone. She'd packed a bag and left a sticky note and didn't look back. Nadine came into the room mid-scroll. She took one look at my face and said, "He finally cracked." I held up the phone, her eyes scanned the screen unimpressed. Jesus. Did he use the "you have to let me explain" one? Yep. They always do. She sat down on the edge of the bed. You gonna answer? No. Good. We sat in silence for a minute, not tense, just still. Then she said something I'll never forget. Letting someone talk isn't always kindness. Sometimes it's just giving them one more chance to hurt you. I nodded, because I'd felt that before, the way a single conversation could unravel weeks of clarity. The way someone's voice could reintroduce doubt like a knife sliding back into a wound that had only just stopped bleeding. He didn't text the rest of that day. No follow-up apology, no paragraphs, no voice notes. But I knew that wasn't the end. Guys like Marcus don't know how to sit with consequence. They don't feel closure unless they're the ones holding the pen, and he'd lost that now. I had the pen. I had the final say. And I was choosing silence. Not because I was cold. Not because I was punishing him, but because I finally understood. He'd said everything I needed to hear by not saying anything for all those months. By letting someone else blur the lines, by defending the wrong person, by gaslighting me into thinking my hurt was unreasonable. Now he wanted a stage for his regret. He wanted to be understood, but I didn't owe him that. I turned off notifications for the day, went for a walk, bought myself a coffee and didn't check my phone once. Not because I was pretending it didn't happen, but because I finally had enough distance to realize it didn't have to define me anymore. Marcus could call 146 more times, and it wouldn't change the truth. He'd crossed a boundary and laughed when I said I felt it. Now he was screaming through a closed door, and I didn't even need to lock it. I just had to stop opening it. It was a Tuesday. I was standing in Nadine's kitchen, half-dressed, eating cereal out of a coffee mug because we'd run out of clean bowls. She was on her second cup of coffee, scrolling her phone, not saying much. Then she looked up. "You're thinking about texting him, aren't you?" I didn't answer right away. She didn't need me to. "I can tell," she said. "Your face gets that polite hostage look." I laughed, barely, but she wasn't joking. "You want to know if he meant it," she said. "The voice messages, the calls, the part where he says, 'Please just let me explain.'" Still, I didn't say anything. Because she was right. I had been wondering. Not about getting back together, I was past that. But the curiosity was creeping in, the kind that comes after silence. The ache for something clean, an admission, a line that makes it all make sense. "I just keep thinking," I said finally. "Maybe I should hear what he has to say." Nadine put her phone down and leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Don't let regret dress up as closure." That line hit like truth disguised as a slap. She kept going. "You want resolution, that's fair. But ask yourself, would hearing him talk really fix anything? Or are you hoping he says just the right combination of words so you can stop doubting your decision? I opened my mouth, closed it. You left for a reason, she said. A damn good one. Don't go digging for apologies just because the silence is starting to feel loud. It was the most direct she'd been since I showed up with a bag and puffy eyes a week earlier. And the worst part? She wasn't being harsh. She was being protective, because she knew me, knew how I worked, knew I'd rationalize a conversation as strength, that I'd convince myself I wasn't reopening the wound, just checking that it had healed right. You want to know if he's sorry, she said. But Marcus doesn't do sorry, he does damage control. I hated how much I needed to hear that, because she was right. Even when he was caught, Marcus didn't ask for forgiveness. He asked for understanding. He wanted you to trace his poor decisions back to something noble: confusion, pressure, emotional exhaustion. Anything but what it actually was. A choice. That night, I played the voice note again. The 4-minute one he sent 2 days after the 46 missed calls. It started like this. I don't even know what to say. Classic. Then he went into a ramble about how things got blurry with Lee, that she was going through stuff, and he wanted to be there for her. That he didn't realize how far it had gone. He used phrases like, "We crossed a line. It wasn't planned. I never stopped loving you." And then, the part that really sealed it. "I was afraid you'd make it a bigger deal than it was." That was the line that told me everything I needed to know. He still didn't think it was a big deal. He didn't name what he did. Didn't apologize. Just tried to explain it in a way that made him look like a confused good guy who just happened to accidentally build an emotional relationship behind his girlfriend's back. By the end of the voice note, I wasn't hurt. I was insulted. Because even now, even stripped down, even after everything, he still thought I could be reasoned with. He thought I'd be moved by tone instead of truth. He thought I was still the version of myself that needed his validation. I hit delete. Nadine looked over from her laptop when she heard the sound. "You good?" I nodded, "Yeah, I'm good." And for the first time since I left, I actually meant it. I listened to it twice. Not because I missed anything the first time, but because I needed to be sure of what wasn't there. It was 4 minutes long, long enough to sound sincere, not long enough to mean anything. He recorded it at 3:14 am, judging by the timestamp. That alone told me more than he meant it to. Marcus never liked talking late at night, said it made people too emotional. But suddenly, at 3 in the morning, he had feelings worth voicing. And of course, it wasn't a phone call. It was a voice note. Safe, scripted. He could say what he wanted without interruption, without the risk of hearing my silence in real time. It started like this. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me." Then a long pause. "I've been thinking about how everything played out, and I just want you to know that I never meant to hurt you." That sentence is the oldest trick in the book. I never meant to. As if intention erases impact. He didn't say her name, not once. Lee was edited out like she was bad press. Instead, she became the situation. What happened? What I didn't handle well. He talked in circles, said he was tired and spread thin, that he felt distant from everyone and got too close to the wrong person. He described it like a car accident he walked into. Like he was just driving and suddenly the world fell apart under his tires. Not once did he say, "I lied," or "I betrayed you," or even the simplest one, "I'm sorry." He said, "I miss you." He said, "I still love you." He said, "You know me better than anyone." But love without truth isn't love. It's leverage. And I wasn't interested in being used for reflection anymore. The last line of the message almost made me laugh. "If you could just give me a chance to explain, I know we could come back from this." Come back to what? A relationship where I couldn't ask questions without being labeled sensitive, where my boundaries were negotiable and my instincts treated like defects. I played the message once more, out of curiosity. Listened to the way his voice dipped when he said, "I miss you." Like emotion might make up for absence. Like performance might disguise omission. It didn't. Because once you've sat with someone's silence long enough, you start hearing what isn't being said louder than what is. I played it for Nadine. Halfway through, she muttered, "Wow, he really thinks he's the victim here." I smiled, he always has. When it ended, she looked at me. "You gonna answer?" "No," I said. "He doesn't want a conversation. He wants a reset button." And what do you want? I want the kind of peace that doesn't ask me to doubt myself. She raised her glass, then block him. I will, I said. But not yet. Why? Because I want to hear the next thing he tries. Talia wasn't close close, more like mutual friends close. We'd been to birthdays, barbecues, movie nights. She was the kind of person who always brought extra drinks and remembered everyone's dog's name. Friendly, warm, but always a little removed. So when she texted me out of nowhere, I didn't know what to expect. Hey, this is random, but can I call you? No emoji, no fluff. I said yes. She called 2 minutes later, voice low like she was already bracing for fallout. I've been sitting on something for a while, she said. And I didn't know if it was my place to say anything. But I keep thinking about you and how quiet you've been. I waited, she exhaled. I saw them. I knew who she meant. Marcus and Lee, a week before you left. It was at that rooftop bar downtown, the one near the old warehouse district. I didn't say anything. They were sitting close, too close. I thought maybe I was misreading it, but then he touched her back, right at her waist. And she leaned into it. Still, I said nothing. I watched them for a while. I thought maybe it was just office flirtation. But it didn't look new. It looked like something that had been happening for a while. I closed my eyes. Not because it hurt, it didn't, but because I'd already known. I just hadn't heard anyone say it out loud yet. He saw me, Talia said. I waved. He looked startled. They left 5 minutes later. I let out a breath. Why are you telling me now? Because I didn't think it was my place. I didn't want to stir anything up. But when I saw Lee's story last night, them at that party, I realized she's not hiding anymore. Was she ever? I asked. She went quiet. No, she said, I guess she wasn't. I sat down on the edge of my bed. You deserve to know, she added. I'm sorry I waited. I didn't blame her. That's the thing about people like Marcus. They're good at making things seem ambiguous. Good at staying just far enough from the line to give everyone else plausible deniability. But now there was no room for doubt. He hadn't just crossed a line. He'd built a home on the other side of it. After we hung up, I stared at the wall for a while. Not angry, not devastated, just still. I thought about every time I'd asked him if something was going on, every time he said I was jealous. Insecure, sensitive. Every time I let those words take root and twist around my ribs. It wasn't about Lee. It never had been. It was about the way he needed me to be wrong, even when I was right. Because if I was right, then he'd have to look in the mirror. And Marcus only looked in mirrors that made him feel good. That's why he needed me. Not for love, for reflection. And that's why it was easy for him to move on, not because I didn't matter, but because he never truly saw me. He saw what I gave him. Attention, affirmation, a soft place to land. He saw how much I wanted it to work and used that hope like currency. But now I had proof, not the kind I needed to show anyone else. Just enough for me. It came at 8:47 p.m. a message from Talia, short and simple. Found this in my camera roll, thought you might want to see it. Underneath, one attachment. I didn't open it right away. Not because I was afraid, but because I already knew what I was going to see. I'd already built it in my head, filled in the blank space with quiet certainty. But knowing something and seeing it, that's different. I tapped the image. It was blurry. Candid, a little overexposed. Probably taken fast, maybe unintentionally. Marcus and Lee. Outside the rooftop bar she'd mentioned. Sitting close at one of those narrow two-person tables. His hand on her back, exactly where Talia said it had been, just under her jacket, fingers curled like it belonged there. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking around. Like someone who knew he wasn't supposed to be seen. And Lee. She was leaning in, smiling at something he'd just said. That easy, familiar smile, like they weren't sneaking, like it was just another night. And maybe it was for them. I stared at the photo for a full minute. And here's the part I didn't expect. I didn't feel rage. I didn't cry. I didn't feel that cold panic I used to get every time something about them felt off and Marcus made me doubt my instincts. What I felt was relief. That I left when I did. That I didn't wait for him to confess. That I didn't beg for an apology or hang around for a version of the truth he might eventually be ready to tell. I had it now, and it looked exactly like I thought it would. I texted Talia back, "Thank you, this is enough." She replied, "I should have said something sooner. You did now, if you need anything. I won't, she didn't take it personally. She knew what I meant, I didn't need more. I had all the evidence I ever needed in memory, in messages, and now in pixels. And I wasn't going to show it to anyone else. Not Nadine, not mutual friends, not even Marcus if he ever reached out again. Because this wasn't about catching him anymore. It was about walking away knowing I was never crazy, never jealous, never overreacting, just right. I waited 3 more days, not because I needed time. Just because I wanted the words to come from stillness, not reaction. Marcus hadn't messaged again since the voice note. Maybe he sensed it was over. Maybe he was waiting for me to crack. Maybe he'd moved on, Lee standing by, ready to absorb his narrative about the emotionally unstable ex, who just couldn't handle how close we were. Either way, I didn't care. I wasn't writing to change his mind. I was writing because there was one last thing I wanted to say, and I only needed one sentence to say it. I opened our thread. All the texts were still there. Some from years ago, jokes, grocery lists, I love yous. The digital residue of a life that looked solid from the outside. I scrolled past everything. Typed my message. You lied to me and I still left kinder than you deserved. That was it. No name, no question, no open door for reply. Just a fact, and then I blocked him. Everywhere. Phone, email, socials. Even the old Spotify account we once shared, the one where I could see what he was listening to on Tuesday mornings, like some twisted emotional weather report. Gone. Not out of rage, but out of peace. Because forgiveness didn't mean access, and closure didn't mean conversation. I told Nadine I'd sent it. She just nodded and said, perfect. I asked if it was too soft. She shook her head. You didn't write it for him, she said. You wrote it for you. She was right, because it didn't matter if he read it or not. Didn't matter if he sat with it for 5 minutes or deleted it on sight. It wasn't a window. It was a wall. A line drawn. Not to protect him from my anger, but to protect me from forgetting how much I'd tolerated just to be reasonable. This wasn't about revenge. It was about remembering who I was before he made me doubt myself, and claiming that version again. I moved into my own place 2 weeks after I blocked him. It wasn't anything special, 1 bedroom, 2nd floor, beige walls, decent light. But the lock was mine. The air felt like mine. And nothing in it had been touched by Marcus. That by itself made it feel like luxury. I didn't tell many people I'd moved. Just Nadine, my sister, and HR, so they could update my address. No big announcement. No Instagram story with fresh keys and a bottle of wine. I wasn't celebrating a milestone. I was reclaiming my baseline. The first night, I unpacked in silence. No music, no TV, just the sound of tape peeling off boxes and drawers sliding open. I put things where I wanted them, even if it didn't make perfect sense. My coffee mugs didn't match. My books were in random stacks. My sheets were new, plain white, soft, unsentimental. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night. No turning over to check if someone else had come to bed. No lying there, waiting for a text to stop or a gut feeling to settle. Just sleep. I stopped checking my phone in the mornings. Not in a dramatic, I'm detoxing from technology way, just naturally. Because there was nothing to check anymore. No late-night messages. No missed calls I'd have to decode. No emotional hostage situations wrapped in, can we talk? At 2 a.m. my phone had gone quiet, and I didn't miss the noise. I got into routines again, small ones, grocery shopping on Saturdays, laundry on Wednesdays. A podcast while I walked to work. I bought a basil plant I wasn't sure I could keep alive and watered it anyway. Sometimes Nadine came over and brought takeout. Sometimes I went to hers and said nothing for hours. Sometimes I still thought about him, but not with longing, with distance. Like remembering a house I once lived in that had a leak in the ceiling no one ever fixed. Eventually, you just stop putting a bucket under it. You move. One afternoon, I found an old hoodie at the bottom of a suitcase, his. Not one of those dramatic, oversized ex-boyfriend hoodies from romantic comedies. Just gray, soft, familiar. I held it for a second, thought about donating it, then tossed it in the trash. It didn't smell like him anymore, and even if it did, I wouldn't have cared. Life didn't get perfect. I still had moments where I wondered what he was telling people. Whether he was painting me as the girl who just couldn't handle how close we got. But I didn't chase those thoughts. I let them pass like wind through a screen, present but harmless. Because the truth was this, I left. I didn't scream, I didn't smear his name, I didn't post cryptic quotes about betrayal. I just walked away. And that kind of exit, that's the one they never see coming, because they're counting on the meltdown. They're counting on the drama so they can stay the victim. I gave him none of that. And in doing so, I took back everything he thought he owned, my time, my narrative, my peace. It had been a month, no word from Marcus. No questions from mutual friends. No sightings, no slip-ups, no ripple effects. It was like the chapter closed clean and everyone quietly agreed not to turn the page back. Then one morning, my phone buzzed. It was a message request on Instagram, the kind that doesn't show the sender's name unless you open it. But I knew who it was. I didn't recognize the profile photo at first, just a blurry sunset and a vague quote in the bio. But the handle gave it away. Lee, her message was short, no punctuation. I'm sorry, I thought I was special too. That was it, no hi, no explanation, no ask, just a sentence that carried more weight than she probably meant it to. I read it once, then again, and I smiled. Not because it was satisfying, not in the revenge fantasy way, but because it confirmed what I already knew: she wasn't chosen. She was used, just like I had been. Only difference, I got out. She was still inside it, picking through whatever story Marcus told to make it all feel survivable. Probably the same script he once used on me, that he didn't mean for it to happen, that he was confused, that he felt seen. They always say they feel seen when what they really mean is forgiven too easily. And for a second, I thought about replying. I thought about saying, I know. I thought about saying, he made both of us feel that way. I thought about saying, you should leave too. But I didn't, because I wasn't her therapist or her future or her next mirror. I wasn't anything to her anymore, and that felt good. I locked my phone, set it down on the kitchen counter, and turned the kettle on. Tea, morning light. Quiet music in the background. I didn't need a final word. I already had the one thing none of them would get: peace. Not the kind that comes after a fight. The kind that comes after you decide there's no fight worth having. Not when you've already won by walking away. Thank you for watching. Please do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I love you all.